let others filter in as they want to. I'll start with a little bit of a house maintenance here. So yes, this is recorded. It will be shared. Um, we have the chat available for you can talk to everyone here. So please use the chat for general comments and banter, and keep any questions that you would like actually answered to the Q&A. That allows us to track them. I won't be so first I'll do a very small intro, and then Matthew will intro himself a little bit further. But Matthew is from All Covered, and he is and All Covered are a Augmentt customer. And so he will be going over today's presentation as the expert today. So I'll be interjecting as little as possible to let him get through the content, and then we'll be doing a Q&A near the end. So Matthew, thank you for joining us today. I think everyone's excited to see what you have for us, and let's kick it off.
Thanks, Robbie. Greatly appreciate it. We've really enjoyed our relationship with Augmentt, and looking forward to this opportunity. I'm not here to sell anyone licensing. We're an MSP, CSP. Some of these things, there's probably a lot of things that are already known, but want to run through this with everyone here. And some of these topics will hit pretty quickly. Licensing is challenging enough inside Microsoft 365. And if you were to go forward and really look at it, you've got to add all these other things on top of it too. And so it just makes it even more complex. As Robbie said, I'm with All Covered. I'm an enterprise engineer, been with All Covered for about 16 years. For the last 8-9 years, my focus has been Microsoft 365. And for about the last 4 years, it's really been focused on licensing, still doing the occasional project. I did our internal migrations when we migrated into our parent organization up in Japan. I was the lead engineer on that, so I still keep my fingers dirty in the actual working. Can we pop up a couple of questions, Robbie, while we get a chance, and just hang out for a moment and let those questions get quickly answered?
Yeah, I think Levi is going to kick that off for us.
Thank you, Levi. Most of us are probably CSPs of some kind, since we actually work with Augmentt, and that's one of the primary ways of getting access to our customer tenants. But just figured, let's see who's who on here. And then the second question, when we're ready for that one, will be, trying to see what will, what value, what question will be the next one. Be what question, would you really like to have answered? And let's see what we can do about getting those answered, particularly during the Q&A session. So
got about 50%, 54% answered. We're seeing, 54% indirect CSP, another 20. Oh, it keeps shifting. 57% indirect CSP, 21% direct CSP.
Okay.
We have one distributor, two I don't knows. Only one person not selling M365 licensing yet.
Okay. All right, cool.
Keeps growing. We have about a 72% answer rate. So
yeah, and then that other question is pretty open-ended. So, if something comes to mind, great. We'll just move on. And so appreciate you all taking the time to answer that question. Just kind of, I figured most of us were going to be CSPs, like I said, of one way or another. So thank you for all that. Greatly appreciate that. Like I said, I'm going to hit some of these topics really quick. You probably already know about these, but if you don't, it's something for you to then pursue and make sure that you understand for your organization. Simplicity, ultimate form of sophistication. Well, Microsoft licensing is anything but simplistic, as we all know. Too many choices, too many options, and we'll get into that a little bit later. The agenda for today, this whole thing of teams versus no teams, and making sure there's some understanding of that. Price changes that have occurred, a price change that's coming up. And then we'll get actually into the license management and trying to do things to help your customers and make life easier for you and your customers. Entra ID, obviously, because we use Augmentt, we all know about Entra ID and the importance of that, but let's just cover that quickly. Microsoft 365 E5, that security and the bundle of E5 itself, but then there's the security add-on and some of the things like that, and then just some other CSP changes that are coming, just so you're aware, to make sure that you're on the knowledge train for this, and that you're aware of these things that might affect your organization and your customers. So tenants, we should all know about and understand about tenants. maybe the most important thing here to take from this page, if you haven't already seen it, is that tenantidlookup.com down at the bottom. And if you go to there and you put in a domain name, it'll tell you whether it's a commercial tenant or whether it's a GCC tenant. I think last time I looked, they did not have the ability to tell you whether you're nonprofit qualified or education qualified. Really, that's more visible inside of a tenant since that's just a commercial tenant. And using something like this is obviously helpful for your customers. You can send them off to it, or just yourself to understand what is your customer doing it. And for us, at least, we see here in the United States, government entities that are actually in a commercial tenant. And there's good and valid reasons for doing that, rather than being in, say, the GCC tenant even. We have a lot of townships and police departments that are in the GCC, but we also have several that are in the commercial. So teams and no teams licensing, this is nothing new. It's been around for a couple of years since the lawsuit in the EU, and then Microsoft brought it to the United States and the rest of the world. What does it affect? It's any new subscription created after October 1st for the Office 365 E1, E3, E5 products and the Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 products. Those now have the no teams designations with the parenthesis and the no teams. New subscriptions are not able to be created like that. So now if your customer does want to use the Teams functionality, there's also the enterprise, Teams enterprise license. And of course, those two products combined come up to a higher price tag than the original with Teams product, even if you ignore the price increase that's happened this year overall. Something to note, though, is that this does not, or this will also affect change of channel. So if your customer is currently on a credit card and they're coming over to CSP, or they're leaving the CSP for some reason and going back to credit card, things like that, they will be forced out of the with Teams license, and they will need to move to the no Teams license. Microsoft figures that over time attrition will happen. But they have made one exception to this, and that is the change of channel when coming out of an enterprise agreement down to the CSP or over to the CSP. We'll talk more about it in the changes, but Microsoft has raised the level on the enterprise agreements for the minimum seats. So we might actually be getting customers that are coming over to us as CSPs and saying, hey, I was in the EA. It does not affect the existing licenses with Teams. Any subscription that currently has the Teams functionality, you can continue to renew them. They can be upgraded into other products. They are end of sale, not end of life. Microsoft has not terminated these and said you can no longer renew these like they have with other products. These are end of sale. So continue to renew them every year. Give your customer that price break of the single product that includes Teams. Don't force them into the two products if they don't need to go in there. And Microsoft decided to let the business products have both options. So you can go either way with those. And the good news is it does not affect the education, nonprofit, and GCC tenants right now. They only have the with Teams products. I don't know, what is it? 75, 80% probably of Microsoft's licensing is in the commercial segment with commercial tenants. So, that impacted most of the customers around the world. Oops, wrong way on the slide, sorry. Price changes, a lot of these price changes are already behind us or were effective behind us, but let's talk about them real quick to make sure you're aware of it. April 1st of this year, Microsoft has now implemented a 5% premium on annual term monthly billed subscriptions. I refer to this as the no longer getting the 12 months same as cash. If we go back 1 year in time, you could get that annual subscription and you could pay for it one time, one lump sum, and you got that price. Or you could say, you know what, I'm going to pay for it over 12 months because we don't have the budget for the entire quantity of our licensing right now. So let's pay for it over the course of 12 months. Microsoft has said, well, that's fine if you want to do that now, but we're going to charge you a 5% price premium on that. So you're no longer getting that same as cash. It does take effect when the subscription renews on or after April 1st. It also affects any subscription when, let's say, customer has an Office 365 E3 subscription and maybe it's underneath the old plan so that it actually is still 12 months same as cash. but now you're going to upgrade some of those licenses into a new subscription of Microsoft 365 E3. That new subscription will be affected by the price increase and the 5% price premium on it right now, even if you co-term the subscription and all that kind of stuff, because it's based on when the subscription starts or the subscription renews. It's not like an enterprise agreement where you buy the price list for the term. So we had a customer renew a subscription on April 2nd, and yep, sorry, they got affected by that 5% price increase. Microsoft does have the ability now also to allow us to change the billing plan. So that way, if it's coming up on a customer's renewal and they say, no, switch us over to the paid one-time annually so we don't have to pay the 5%, you can do that now and that'll take effect. But you got to get that in place before the renewal occurs. This is not one of those things you can do in that 168-hour change window after renewal. We like this slide just to show this because it kind of really gives a clear picture as to when a customer should expect to see that price increase. If the customer was fortunate to have their subscription renew on March 31st, congratulations, they got 12 months of avoiding that 5% price increase, and it'll kick in on March 31st of 2026. If regrettably their subscription renewed on April 1st of this year, it kicked in and took effect immediately. And then for any of our customers that maybe take effect here at the 1st of June or anywhere else in the next year, it actually takes effect at that point in time. So just a simple slide to kind of give a picture view of when they should expect the increase. And it's been helpful for our customers to put together something like this. Price increases for actual individual products. You've probably seen all these. Some of these were actually pretty sizable increases. Microsoft's justification was that these products have been around for 8 or 10 years and have not gone through a price increase over time, but they've increased the functionality. Okay, we'll give it to them. Notably, the Power BI Pro licenses jumped up pretty good on their pricing, and also some of the Teams things also. This price increase, I think, for Power BI Pro was fairly significant of a price jump. And so one of the things that we've seen recently, though, if you haven't heard it and you do deal with government customers here in the United States, these price increases will be taking effect over the course of multiple years. They are obligated to not increase pricing for government customers by more than 10% a year. So because some of these price increases were so sizable, there are actually multi-year increases, with the first increase happening July 1st of this year, another increase next year on July 1st, another increase the year after if necessary, and even another increase in 2028 if necessary, to bring the government pricing up to the same pricing as the commercial tenants. I guess we could hope that in the future maybe we'll never see more than a 10% price increase from Microsoft, but I wouldn't rely on that. So let's get into really what the meat of talking about this is, and that's license management, making your life easier as an MSP and a CSP, making your customer's life easier. And you maybe have seen this spreadsheet before. It's a PDF. Some partners can actually get this as a spreadsheet from Microsoft and other vendors. But this is actually the last bullet on this page, and that's understanding what comes with each product. So often I hear from people, oh, E3 comes with the Entra ID P1 license, right? And it drives me nuts to hear someone say, oh, we need an E3. An E3 of what? You know, how many products are out there with E3? Not just the Office 365 E3, but the Microsoft 365 E3. And then there's the Enterprise Mobility and Security E3, of course. It's a classification of a product. It's not an actual product itself. So having this spreadsheet, or being able to point your customers to the various PDFs that are available out there with Microsoft. There is the enterprise one here. There's a business grade one. There are also education and GCC versions of these. If you happen to get your hands on the partner and internal use one from Microsoft, do not distribute that out to your customers. There's a clear designation up in the upper left corner now that says for internal use and partner use only, not to share it. I think Microsoft did not do that a year or so ago, but don't get yourself in trouble with them. But using this, working toward who is using what inside the customer's organization. what products do they actually have? Are they being multi-licensed for a reason? Things like that. Come up with classifications of users. We'll talk about this more on the next page, and various personas. Um, and how does it really affect their organization? This day and age now, you have to ask the question though, do they actually use Teams, or are they using Slack, WebEx, or Zoom as their primary communications platform? Because now you can provide them the licensing, that they don't have to pay for that extra fee. And so maybe in that case where an organization is primarily based on Slack or WebEx, or Zoom, you can save them a few dollars on their Microsoft 365 licensing. You can't do a midterm upgrade to those products, I believe. I'd have to double check that. But you can certainly do it at renewal. You could take them out of the full with Teams product and bring them down to the no Teams product and save them a few bucks every month per user. So looking at that. When we do an assessment of our customer, these are three of the first hits that we do inside of a customer's environment. We want the customer working with us. We're using their global admin credentials to go in there and see it so that they themselves know where to go look and hopefully learn a little bit. It's that whole thing, teach someone to fish rather than doing the work. Admin.microsoft.com, you go to that website and you go into billing and licenses. Obviously, this is a nice summary to see what products they have. Microsoft finally has everything consolidated so that when there is one product of Microsoft 365 Business Standard, you actually see all the Business Standard licensing consolidated together. If you've been doing licensing long enough, about 4 or 5 years ago, you could have 2 or 3 different Business 365 business standards listed, a few other things, but it's a nice summary. And so, how many are they really using, obviously, for each of their products, and are they over licensed? Or some situations they get themselves into, are they actually under licensed somehow, and yet it's still working for them? Once you've checked that out, obviously, then going into the billing your products page. If you've been poking around this page over the last few years, it was confusing a few years ago because of some of the columns that they were listing and the repeating of the data and giving people concerns as to, are they really doubly licensed, particularly when they had subscriptions from multiple providers, credit card and a CSP, or a couple different credit card subscriptions, things like that. Now this page is confusing in the fact that they have restructured the page so that it's based on each one of the billing profiles. And so it's quite possible that when you go into this billing your products page, it's going to show up and it's going to show no licenses at all. There's a link. It's a little bit hard to find sometimes, but it's directly there once you find it and you know where to look. A link directly above the main table. And you can click on that and then you can go over and you can pick a different billing profile. I've seen some customers that have had as many as 15 billing profiles in there. Usually it's only about 3 or 4, but you got to go through and you got to check each one and see who has the products underneath them. Hopefully there's one that says the organization name, and then it might say MCA or MOSA in parentheses. You'll finally find their products. You might have to look through 2 or 3 profiles to actually get the complete listing of products, where their subscriptions are, and how many quantities they're getting from each of the subscriptions, particularly if they've been different providers over the years, or just different credit cards getting used. Even employees purchasing their own subscriptions, they'll show up here underneath a different billing profile now. Key things in here, of course, are when they expire or when they renew, how much they're paying for them. Something that we've actually started doing is trying to provide flexibility to the customers. If you've got any familiarity with the new commerce experience and how rigid it is compared to the old legacy model, with our customers' legacy, we could do everything we wanted to, increase, decrease, cancel the subscription for our customers and give them all the flexibility that they wanted. In CE, now you don't have that. If the customer is underneath the old Microsoft Office subscription agreement, MOSA, they have all of that flexibility still. They can decrease their credit card quantity or their billed quantity. They could even go through and cancel the subscription. To cancel a subscription now, though, if they're canceling it earlier than the end of term, they have to go through a CSP. We as CSPs now have to submit the support tickets, and they then reach out to the customer, and the customer has to confirm that they want that subscription canceled. So there's a little more effort into it, but it's now a formal process. All of the MOSA subscriptions, though, too, are being migrated over to MCA. I've not seen a timeline for this. As far as I can tell, it occurs on the next renewal of the subscription, but the customer should understand that they are losing all of the flexibility from the old MOSA subscriptions, and they will be underneath Microsoft Customer Agreement. And that one agreement will affect all subscription sources, whether it's direct bill from Microsoft, whether it's CSP provided licensing, even enterprise agreement, they all fall underneath the MCA now. And it's the whole rules of, the provider being responsible for the subscriptions to the customer being obligated, the limited amount of time that you have to adjust the quantities upon creation or renewal, and you're stuck with your quantity. You cannot decrease your quantity until renewal. So all those rules are coming into place, and that'll all be in place for everybody here soon. But go through then and figure out what is it each user actually using. Microsoft has that export you can do. Quite frankly, it's atrocious. It's poorly formatted, and it's not easy to break it up into a table. We've created our own PowerShell script that we go through, list every user, list every product that's there. It turns it into an Excel spreadsheet. You can filter, and you can see who's using what. You can see, wait a second, why is this user licensed for both Exchange Online Plan 1 and Microsoft 365 Business Premium? Oh, because we upgraded them and somebody forgot to take a license away from them. Why is there a shared mailbox that has licensing? You don't need that anymore unless it's an oversized mailbox. Those kind of things. So work with that to get down to, what are your users really happening? Then the next thing is figure out what you can do to organize the things. Our belief is that most organizations, certainly in the small to medium business profile, can get away with probably 2 or 3 personas of users. Once you start getting into the medium to enterprise, maybe you've got more persona, but you're still not going to have an unlimited number of persona. And an easy example of this is you think of a bank. With a bank, you've got your tellers. They're behind the glass window, the locked door. They're handling all the money. They're going to be a very different persona than the people that are on the front area of the bank. The bank manager, the loan officers, other people like that. They've got a different persona. But you know what? That bank manager and those loan officers probably don't have too different of a persona, and really can be the same type of person when it comes to licensing and such like that. Then you have to look and say, well, okay, now who's behind the wall? Who's the back office admins, and who are the C-levels? Do they really need to have different personas, or can they actually be very similar to your your bank managers, and when it comes to licensing in general on your core products? And then you start looking at, well, now we have a few variations. License stacking, if you haven't encountered that, it's great. Right now, it's mostly in place for the Exchange products only, but it's coming for other products. And how often have you heard someone upgrading someone from, say, Microsoft 365 Business Premium up to Office 365 E3 because they've got the 100 gig mailbox? They need the bigger mailbox. Why are you doing that and taking away all of the functionality, all the security, all the endpoint management capability of the Business Premium and moving them up to Microsoft 3 or up to Office 365 E3? Maybe you're not doing that. Maybe you're moving them up to Microsoft 365 E3. Okay, great. You've retained all that functionality, but now you've just caused the customer to have a $14 or $15 price increase potentially. Why not give them an Exchange Online Plan 2 mailbox license on top of their Business Premium? Now they keep all the Business Premium functionality. Your user still keeps all the Business Premium functionality, but you've given them the 100 gig mailbox because it stacks. The Exchange licenses work side by side, and Microsoft says, which license is going to give you the greatest capability. And it goes, oh, the Exchange Online Plan 2 gives you the greater capability, the larger mailbox, the ability to do the litigation hold and things like that. Upgrading existing licensing. A bunch of customers with business standards. Come on, get them up to business premiums. Bring that functionality along. Not that big of a price increase. And quite frankly, this day and age, you got to have the business premium with the Intra ID P1 to really have the functionality that your customers need and that you want your customers to have for the right security. We've encountered a bunch of folks that seem to think that they can only buy annual term licensing or only buy monthly term licensing. It's obviously not the case. So getting that conveyed not only to the sales staff, but also to the customers and helping them understand that. I always use the example of either you've hired a bunch of Santas and elves to work all your shopping malls during the winter months, or you've got a bunch of seasonal summer interns or seasonal workers at your construction company that come in. And why not use the monthly term licensing to cover that float? Even better, because if you work your licensing right for your customer, maybe those customers that have a bunch of the summer interns or have these seasonal construction workers, why not start working so that you realign all their subscriptions to renew October 1st? Then all of a sudden, now what you've got is they can take advantage of it that in May, as they start ramping up, they can add the licensing at the regular price for the annual term. And then everyone just knows that come October 1st or even September 1st, whenever, they just reset their quantity back down. Take advantage of what Microsoft allows you to do with the licensing, realign the subscriptions, and then now for your seasonal summer workers, you're just paying the regular price, avoiding that 20% surcharge, and you just reset your quantity back on October 1st. You've done your customer a good thing by saving them, that extra expense. At some point, obviously, you're going to have to add on secondary applications, Visio, Project, Power Platforms, Copilot these days. You can't go through a Microsoft presentation without them talking about Copilot. All that licensing, obviously, but you're still keeping your primary persona of 2 or 3 different types of users, core products, and things like that. And if you haven't started using it, look at group-based licensing. Group-based licensing used to be restricted to Office 365 E3 or greater products and also products that had Intra ID P1. Everything I'm seeing says that now that they've realigned it and it's over in Office 365 or in the M365 admin, it's available for everyone. So even customers that have exclusively Office 365 E1 can use it. I'm waiting for somebody to contradict me on this. And I've been to Microsoft conferences recently and have not had anyone contradict me on this so far. The information out there publicly is limited, but group-based licensing is available to everyone. And so fine, you've got a bunch of cloud users, you start sticking them in groups, you license that security group, and now as soon as a new employee comes along, you add them to the correct security groups, they're automatically licensed. Well, take that to the next level of ease for you as an MSP, CSP. If your customer has on-prem Active Directory and you're synchronizing using Intra ID Sync these days to synchronize all the user accounts up to M365 and Intra, why not use on-prem based groups that you're also synchronizing? Now you go and create the new employee, you add them to the correct security groups. The employee is synchronized up, the security group is synchronized up. The user gets created in the cloud, gets automatically assigned the license, gets automatically created the mailbox, gets added presumably to the security group that enforces MFA through conditional access policy, also puts them in the self-service password reset capability. And I'm probably missing something else that you can do with that right off the bat, but there you go. As an MSP, CSP, now you're saving yourself time because you no longer have to go through that process of, okay, we created the user account and we'll come back either later this afternoon or an hour or tomorrow, and we'll finish up by making sure that they're licensed and they're created with the mailbox and all that kind of stuff. Group-based licensing can be your friend and take it so that now you're touching that user account one time and it gets created. The important thing, though, is that group-based licensing will not automatically add licensing into your customer's tenant. So if you don't have the licensing available, it's not going to work. But just make sure that you have the licensing available inside the customer tenant before you pull that off. Talking about licensing and the capabilities of it, Intra ID. If you use Augmentt at all, you know about the Intra ID requirements for so many of the things. And our opinion is that the Intra ID P1 or its big brothers, P2 and EMS E3, etc., is the best way to enforce MFA. Per user MFA, maybe not going away, but it's being realigned, doing things differently. I swear I've seen tenants created that don't have the ability to do per user MFA. I've seen the ability where some of these Microsoft created conditional access policies don't allow you to adjust the membership in them. I don't know. I haven't been able to figure it out fully as to what Microsoft's doing with those things. But if you can get them to the P1 or something that includes the Intra ID P1 like Business Premium, that's the right way to do it. Take advantage of all those other capabilities then. As I mentioned on the previous slide, conditional access policies, self-service password reset, things like that. Obviously synchronizing even password changes back to on-prem Active Directory. You can do that when you have the Intra ID P1. You're probably aware of this because you use Augmentt, and I love the fact that Augmentt has put in these 2 checks into the audits, and the fact that a single Intra ID P1 or P2 will enable that functionality for every user in the tenant. How many times have you gone into a tenant, you've done an audit, and they've got one Intra ID P1 in there, and you see this conditional access policy that says, apply to all users except the break glass account and require MFA. It's like there's only one license in there. Augmentt has the audit that can tell you that, you know, for the Intra ID P1 and P2, and so it's at least a step towards us being able to easily see that in the audits. We include that by default in our audits that we provide to our customers when we are doing the initial pre-sale check. If you were not aware, there was at least one vendor about 5 years ago that would tell customers, oh no, you just need one copy of the Intra ID or then Azure Active Directory P1 license to activate the functionality, and you can do the conditional access policy that allows us to authenticate. I think that vendor got smacked up the head pretty good by Microsoft and said, don't do that anymore. So you have to look at it and say, well, what is the need for the customer to really buy that other third-party MFA platform if you can do all of that functionality through Microsoft 365 and Intra ID with the Intra ID P1, P2 licensing? You can do the SSOs and all that kind of capability. So we have specific use cases as to when we will take a customer to one of those other third-party platforms, but by default, we use the native stuff. And security defaults does not enforce MFA. Okay, if you've ever tried to use security defaults and go to something that requires MFA, you get stuck. You get blocked because it doesn't have the MFA requirement marked in the token. So what are you going to do? Security defaults and enable per user MFA? Yeah, we've got some tenants that have done that in the past, but we're moving away from all that. So security defaults, we understand why Microsoft did it. It's a good first step, but it's not the best solution for the customer. We can talk about the tenant security growing up, obviously, and going from security defaults through Intra ID P1, P2, the EMS E3, E5. If you have never seen this site, M365maps.com, go check it out. Honestly, it is my favorite M365 site on the internet. It is created and maintained by a guy by the name of Aaron Dinage. He is out of Australia. He's actually a Microsoft employee, but this is a side project of his. And he gave us all a Christmas present by updating the site significantly just before Christmas. It had been about 1.5 years since he had updated it. And he's been doing updates since then routinely. He's got these great diagrams. This is the one that shows all the Intra ID, P1, P2, EMS, E3, E5 overlaps. You can see the different little square boxes. And every one of these boxes that are in here then that talk about some functionality actually links to the Microsoft page to give you further details on it. I love turning this page over to customers and letting them go wander around and look at functionality, especially when you get to some of the IT folks in the customer environment. Another great page, I didn't have room for it in the slide deck here, is to go pull up his Microsoft 365 E3 page. And there's a big red section off to the left that has Office 365 E3. There's a section in the middle that talks about EMS E3. And then there's a section off to the right that talks about the Windows 365 stuff. And it's a beautiful diagram to have your customers understand. You mean I don't get all this functionality when I bought Office 365 E3? It's like, no, you're getting the stuff in the red. You don't get all the stuff to the right of that. And it's a really easy diagram to help convince your customers why they need to take the step up. Microsoft's made some big announcements. I think it was back in April regarding the Microsoft 365 E5 security add-on. And so we'll touch on that here for a second. We all know the Microsoft 365 E5 is the top of the product line for Microsoft. It's also got the biggest price tag for a single bundle, somewhere around $57 per user per month. And you're not intended to be able to read this diagram clearly and to get all of it out of it. But what I want to show you with this diagram, the chart of capabilities, is how much the Microsoft 365 E5 on the far right-hand edge gives you and all capabilities. Even when you're looking at Office 365 E5 there in the black bar, what you do and don't get from it, what you get when you're in the Microsoft 365 E3 or compared to Business Premium, you lose a lot of functionality. And between myself and our practice director, like I said, we've attended a variety of Microsoft conferences, all the presentations that are going on regarding Copilot and other Gen AI readiness and things like that. They're not even sure exactly where the line is drawn as to what would be the minimum product you need for your customer. But the best product that you need for your customer is honestly the Microsoft 365 E5. And the reason why is because of the additional capabilities that you get between security and compliance. And this diagram's a little more readable here, but one of the things that you get here about 6-7 lines up from the bottom is access reviews. And if everyone thought Delve was a problem, 3, 4, 5 years ago, when all of a sudden somebody would show up and it's like, why is Sally able to see that our CFO is modifying a budget spreadsheet? And it's like, well, that would be because Sally technically has access to that document because your security is not locked down tight. The only way you can actually do a access review coming from the other direction to say, well, what does Sally have access to, is you have to have a product that includes that functionality. That's either Microsoft 365 E5, or I suspect probably EMS E5, but this E5 security add-on also has that capability. And what's nice is that the announcement that Microsoft made in April is that Business Premium can now use this security add-on for the E5 security add-on. You're allowed to combine that product. So you've got a bunch of your users, they need to take it to the next level for their security and capability, but they're all on Business Premium. Somewhere around $22, $23 a month per user. Are you going to take them all the way up to a $57 product? Or why not add a $12 monthly add-on to it? So now you've just taken them up to about $34 or $35. That's what this E5 security add-on is list price. Okay, look at all the enhanced security functionality that you get. You can even use this add-on on Microsoft 365 E3 and fill in a bunch of those holes, so that from an E3, you're going from around $36 or $37 up to $38, $39, and not the whole, or excuse me, $48, $49, and not the whole $57. But look at some of these add-ons. Regrettably, the compliance add-on is not available yet for Business Premium. But this functionality that you get here, you go up to the Entra ID P2. So now you can also do the risk-based logins. You can do the impossible travel. Those kind of things. It goes back to that persona thing that I said several slides back, where maybe you have one persona for all of your bank employees, or one or two personas for your bank employees, but your C-levels who travel around visiting conferences, visiting branches, finance meetings, whatever it is around the world, you just give them the add-on for the Microsoft 365 security, E5 security, which you've, by the way, done that through group-based license. So that way you make sure all your C-levels are a member of this particular group and they're automatically assigned that licensing, automatically configured for the various policies, so on and so on and so on. It really is getting your organizations ready. Microsoft even renamed what their CSP or some of their partner programs to include AI in the name of it. I personally believe they should rename themselves, or their motto should be, "Hi, we're Microsoft. We're a Copilot company." This day and age, if you've ever seen that diagram of all the different Copilots that they have, I think last count I heard there was somewhere of 130 plus, and it's only going to continue on. I'm about out of time here because we want to make sure we get to questions, so we'll hit the slide really quick. Enterprise agreement now has a floor of 500 seats. It used to be 250, so you might be seeing customers come over to you wanting to move into a CSP, and they do get to retain that with Teams functionality. That's that change of channel we talked about earlier. Legacy subscriptions, all your commercial customers are hopefully off of them by now. The last of the public sector, education, government, and nonprofit will be off of those by October, hopefully. And if you don't have, there are some products that don't automatically migrate. If you need to manually migrate them, you'll figure it out which product they need to switch to. Migrate them off, get them off of it. Don't let those legacy subscriptions keep going around. I know a lot of the big providers like Ingram, TD Synnex, Pax8, and others forced all of that a year or two ago when Microsoft first threatened all of this back in 2022. So maybe you're not even dealing with that at all, but if you are, move on, get done with it. Microsoft just announced May 1st in a partner blog, if you haven't seen it, there are direct and indirect requirements that are now coming, including security, making sure that all the administrative privileged accounts have MFA on them. It's not just the fact that the portal will enforce it, but it's the fact that they have to have it even enable on them. And there are future requirements too, to the point where even users will be required to have MFA. So be aware that if you haven't seen that partner blog post, go get it. Microsoft also just announced 3-year product SKUs, and these will be effective June 1st for the Microsoft 365 E3 and E5 with and without Teams, the Teams Enterprise product, and also this E5 security add-on and the compliance add-on. They promised us 3-year SKUs back in 2022, and they finally have come out with them. Why? Probably partially because of the CSP to EA transition, or the EA to CSP transition, to be able to keep up with that. But then you have to ask yourself as your organization, why would you want to sell this licensing? Knowing that you hold the obligation as an MSP, CSP for all of this licensing if your customer was to go under, or if your customer was to leave you and abandon you on the licensing, you're stuck holding that bill. Why would you want to sell this licensing? That's a question that you honestly need to have with your financial folks and your risk. You'll have some customers that you will absolutely trust and you'll do it with, and that's fine. But make sure you understand why. We've had transfers between CSPs now for, I think, over a year. And the only thing I want to say on this really is make sure that you understand that the losing CSP, the one who currently has it, and you've taken a customer away from somebody and they're coming over to you now. The losing CSP is not obligated to accept the transfer. Don't try to do any threats or anything like that. We've had customers and partners try to threaten us. Microsoft will not get involved. They've said that too many times. They just won't get involved. They're not going to play along with that. And they gave us the ability to transfer. They're not going to get involved in enforcing the transfer. And then I mentioned it already earlier. This one last related thing is that all the credit card and direct billing is shifting to MCA. So they'll be underneath the exact same obligations. I've talked a lot. Thankfully, we still have some time left in this series. So what I will say is let's go into Q&A and let's see what questions have come out, either Robbie or Levi in the chat, or Q&A, whatever you got. Let's see if we can answer some questions.
Yeah, thanks, Matthew. First of all, great presentation. This was great content to go through. So if you've got questions, put them in the question and answers if you don't mind, but I do have a few in the chat that I'll go through here. So
Yeah.
there was a license 101 question. What is the best way for an MSP to get access to clients' licenses? I'm not sure how you
And
interpret that, but you're an MSP, so what are you
yeah,
thinking?
you're going to need, at first, you're going to need your customer's help. You got to go in and they'll tell you that someone who has license administrator privilege can get CM also, but the reality is probably it's a global admin. You're going to have them help you get in there. And back on that slide that I had where admin and or billing and licenses, where you can see the summary versus billing and your products, you can, as a CSP who has the GDAP privileges, that granular delegated admin privileges into a customer tenant, you can see the licenses page to get the summary. You cannot see the your products. The only way you can see that your products page is you have to go in through a global admin or license admin account to your customer's tenant. So the reality is we end up working with our customers and saying, let's go take a look. It's good for them to understand and know where the licensing is. We've had plenty of customers tell us, oh yeah, our current MSP is buying our licensing for us. And you go in and you go, no, that says it's on your credit card. So yeah, that's the way you got to do it. Even PowerShell, just PowerShell and APIs, you can't see all the details you can when you go directly in as global admin. So, okay, next.
I guess I could add another option is send them a magic link request and you'll get a nice license report in Augmentt.
You will see again the use that
The usage.
Augmentt will see the exact same thing that you see through a normal GDAP relationship, because it is a GDAP relationship.
Yeah.
You'll see what's on the licenses page and you'll see what's assigned to every user, but you won't see where they're buying their licensing from.
Yep.
That's the
Correct.
thing that's missing and that you have to get when you go in as a global admin account. And
Yep.
so we're in with our customers, and particularly onboarding new customers or when we gain a customer from another provider. We're definitely in there with a global admin.
Anthony, I see you've got your hand raised. If you want to just put in the question maybe in the chat or the Q&A, we'd love to answer it. Someone asked well, you touched it a little bit on MFA, so because of that, there's when would you move a client to a third-party MFA platform?
Yeah, I did not touch on that. Microsoft has their Windows Hello, and you can do that, and it works great with Surface tablets and things like that. But Microsoft still has not implemented what used to be known as the Gina DLL capability, where if you were going to use MFA to log into a workstation or into a Citrix or RDS server, we will switch over and use a third-party platform in those cases so that maybe a customer does not want to put their Citrix behind a firewall. They want it publicly accessible on the internet, but they want it protected by MFA. That's absolutely when the third-party MFA platforms do it better, because they can load the correct DLLs and modules into it, configure it up, so it goes out and it does that. And that's the first one that I know of. It's been a long time since I've had to do any of those implementations like that, but that's one I just remember for years now. That's been like the number one go-to why you switch to another one.
Yep. So I think we've started a theme here. So this one is selling M365 101 question. What is the blueprint for an MSP to sell M365 licenses to SMBs and make money while doing it? What's the business model and where's the value add generated for an MSP to make some money while selling M365 licenses?
Sure. Microsoft has positioned the M365 Business Premium as a sweet spot for customers under 300 seats. For that $22-23 price, you get everything in business standard, plus you get everything in the EMS E3 bundle, which is another $10 to $11 or something like that. That means you get all the Entra ID functionality for conditional access policies, self-service password reset, self-service password reset right back to on-prem if they synchronize their accounts. You get the managed Intune endpoint. You get the unlimited, it used to be unlimited, the 1.5 terabyte archive mailbox. If a customer has a business standard license, they only get the 50 gig front end mailbox and the 50 gig archive mailbox behind it. But if they've got business premium, they get the 50 gig front end mailbox and they get the 1.5 terabyte maximum archive mailbox behind it. It has to grow, it has to expand, all that kind of stuff, but you get that. So that in a license itself makes that license worthwhile. For you then as an MSP, CSP, now all of a sudden you get to sell them a project to implement identity, implement conditional access policies, MFA using the conditional access policies, self-service password reset, self-service password reset right back to the on-prem synchronization of accounts. And I say on-prem AD. For all we know, that could be a domain controller that's up in a cloud hosted in your data center. You also can implement them a project to implement Intune. And so now, if you're doing it, not only are you implementing Intune, most of the customers are not going to know how to manage their own Intune. Are you doing something to manage Intune and taking that the next level? If anyone thinks that Microsoft 365 is set it and forget it these days, that right there you can convince them to move to your management and services. 8 years ago when we started our project implementation, we were moving mailboxes out of Exchange and Network Solutions and everybody else and hosting them into M365. Then this thing called COVID came along and everybody went into Teams and that was the hot thing. Now it's Copilot and other functionality and people realizing that they can do work remotely. You cannot set and forget these environments. They need to be managed and supported by MSPs, CSPs, or in-house and IT if they're big enough. But small and medium, that's where we as MSPs and CSPs should be looking at them.
Love it. Another one came in. Is there an EDU? I think that's education equivalent to business premium.
No. The M365 business products are not available to education nor GCC. In the education realm, look at the Microsoft 365 E3. That price is so low, you sell them that instead. Or excuse me, the Microsoft 365 A3 because of the academic.
Yes.
But the pricing on that stuff is so low, you just go for the enterprise grade products. It seemed like once upon a time, I wasn't even finding the Exchange Online Plan 1 plain mailbox in education. And I have to go back and double check this, but because the pricing on like their free license for A1 was so cheap, you just went to the A1 instead of, and you turned off the services. So yeah, so you won't find the business premium in the education. And none of the M365 business, you won't find any of those in the education.
Awesome.
Good question.
And this one's for me because you went over it, but I'm not sure I understood it well. So you talked about especially these seasonal type of users.
Yeah.
And so how would you do that transition from maybe they weren't doing it the most economical way, and so they're stuck in what do you expect they're in? Are they in a monthly starting point, or are they already in a yearly starting point and you want to transition to the new like October starting time?
Sure. And this is where co-terming licenses comes in handy. So let's just hypothetically say that you're in the situation where your customer starts in the worst possible time. April 1st is when the subscriptions start. And so every April 1st they renew. That means during the summertime, you're going to pick up these monthly term licenses at 20% price premium. You're going to have them for 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And you kind of go, well, yeah, that's pretty expensive. What you want to do is the next go around, let's say they choose the October 1st date as to when they want to reset. Start a subscription with one product in it, one license. You could even do it honestly with a free license. There's some free licenses out there when you know what you're looking for in the licensing. Start one free license on October 1st. Now set all of your other subscriptions to co-term to that one license. Next time they renew. Now all of a sudden you're shifting your April 1st. April 1st will come around. The subscription will renew there, but it'll renew to co-term to your October 1st date. And now you've just taken advantage of being able to use your summer months and drop off the quantity then on October 1st.
I don't think
It
I've
might
ever done
take
any co-terming. Is that pretty straightforward in the
co-terming is
portals, or?
only available to CSPs, direct CSPs and indirect CSPs.
Okay,
You only get this. You don't get it when you're doing credit card subscriptions. And
got
so
it.
this is one of the advantages that you can get when you go to a CSP to convince your customers to come to you as a CSP. Microsoft did not release co-terming when they first brought out new commerce experience back in early 2022. I mean, and it didn't come out until mid to late that year. So there were all these subscriptions that were getting started all this different time and having these different renewal dates. And that meant you were having multiple conversations with your customers to say, well, okay, let's talk about the subscription that's coming up for renewal and this subscription that's coming up for renewal. If you're still doing that, work with the co-terms, get them in place, figure out how to do it. It might take you, admittedly, a year or two, but get it so that you're having one series of conversations with your customers and bring it up so that way you say, great, we're starting to talk in March about your renewals that are happening on April 1st. Figure it all out, get it in place. Don't have 6 conversations over the course of the year. Have one series of conversations leading up to it.
I've definitely seen our customers' license reports where a lot of licenses have different renewal dates on them. So I
Yeah,
think
and as long as
it's
they're through
good.
a CSP of any kind, you can get them to a co-term, but if they're on a credit card, you're stuck. Or you're
Awesome.
forced. I guess you could buy it, you could go, oh wait, we want to line everything April 1st. Okay, purchase one license of these different products on this day, and then let the other subscriptions expire, increase the quantity back up, yeah, shell game. You could do all that kind of stuff, but you could pull it off. But too much work.
Beauty. Well, we're at the top of the hour. No more questions coming in,
Okay.
but thank you for your time as always. This has been fantastic presentation. And to anyone else who's on, I mean, if you have a topic you'd love to hear us talk about or you want to participate, we'd love it. I think you had one last question for any of our Canadian MSPs.
Sure. I present at Microsoft conferences from time to time. There's actually a Canadian Cloud Summit coming up. I would love to talk to CSP direct or indirect, a few of you, about what licensing prices look like in Canada, because every market has their own separate price lists. And as a US-based company, I can't see what price looks like in Canada or Germany or something like that. I'd love to see what Canadian price lists look like to kind of leverage that into some of my conversations and stuff like that. I was at a presentation in February, met a gentleman from Germany and learned a lot about how it's done very differently over there in that part of the world. So if anyone from Canada wants to reach out to me, I'd love to talk to you a little bit and just compare some notes. Thanks. Appreciate that,
Info
Robert.
is on the screen. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot for your time. Appreciate it, everybody. Take
Have a
care.
good rest of the day.